So, good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to start simply by asking you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Good. So I would consider myself a social entrepreneur. I have a background as a lawyer, but in 2012, I felt that I can't do this anymore. I have to do something meaningful. And I built an NGO named Raoul Wallenberg Academy that works to empower youth to make a difference. So we do high school trainings for high school students, leadership training for high school students, and also now teacher trainings and school projects. Last year we trained about 25,000 people. And after 4 years, I would say 2015, I was quite happy with where I was and the state of the world. We had the Paris Agreement. We were lowering emissions for the first time, I think, in my lifetime. And things were looking quite good. I think we were doing good work with the Academy. And then 2016 happened and the emissions were going up again. Brexit happened, Trump got elected, and I realized, I thought that we would just have to work a bit to get on the right path. And I realized we have to do more than that. The political system is not really coming along as we hoped. So I started as a part of starting, I co-founded a political party called the Initiative. And the mission was really to try to fix politics. So we wanted to do politics differently. We wanted to crowdsource our political content. So we launched with 3 challenges we wanted to solve: the environment, the well-being, and in order to do that, democracy, and then 6 values. And then we invite people to be a part of co-creating the political content in workshops and online. But after a few years of doing that, I realized that things are actually even worse than I thought when I started this political party. And I realized that I got convinced, I would say, that we can't solve our current problems within the current political system. So I left the party in order to see, okay, what do we do then? And that's actually what I'm working on now. So that's the brief, not so brief maybe, but that's a bit about me.
Great. And so we were going to explore just for a moment what we had in common, which was this, entering into politics via, asking the question, if this politics is broken, what is the alternative? And, you mentioned that you talked about crowdsourcing as an indication of what needed to be done. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Why is crowdsourcing relevant, in your view?
I think what we managed to do in the 1900s, if we've seen, I think the big move has been the development of the welfare state, and that had not been possible to do had we not introduced democracy. We have not been able to have a king introduce those taxes on people. That would not have been acceptable. So I think if we want to do real big change and change society, and we have to change society enormously much in order to tackle now climate change and the environmental challenges we're facing, then people really have to feel that they are involved. And right now, people don't feel that. We have 2-3% involved in political parties as members. You get to vote every 3-4 years. So in order to tackle these challenges, people really have to feel that, okay, I was actually listened to, I was actually involved. Otherwise, people will not accept it, not go along or revolt. And so we have to take the next step of democracy. Democracy was it's been around in this current form for more or less 100 years. And hasn't developed so much. And I think that was an innovation, big innovation when it came, but we really have to take the next step. And I think if we had invented democracy today, we would have done it completely differently with all the tools we have for participation today, online, virtual meetings like this, and also meetings, and also the education level has grown tremendously. So we have also in the citizens has much more tools to participate in politics.
So tell me a little bit, going a little bit backwards into your own personal history. You know, when you think about yourself growing up, what do you think politics meant to you, and what made you passionate about wanting to move into that sphere?
Well, politics for me is always about how do we govern society? How do we decide that society should look like? So that was, for me, growing up, I think it was mainly party politics, but now I think it's much broader than that. It's civil movements and NGO sector and whatnot, human rights. I think we talked very much about politics when I grew up, and I was encouraged to form my own opinion and to argue for my standpoint, and so I think it was always very present growing up. And I come from a family that is not politically involved, but very involved in society. I had an uncle who was at the foreign diplomat. I had another uncle who was at the UN, and so I think it was very present. And then when I was 20, I did an internship in the US Congress, and that was 2003, right after the Iraq invasion, and they were looking for weapons of mass destruction. I was in the Foreign Affairs Committee, so I really got to see like the big politics firsthand, and that was for me, I think a life-changing experience. So after that, I think I've been very, or I was before, but after that, certainly very passionate about politics and how politics is done. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hearing that you are moving across certain domains very easily, because you've taught yourself to do that, or because it comes naturally to you. But let's imagine that people talk about politics on the one hand, and then they talk about society on the other. Do you feel that it's easy to make politics a social issue, or do you sense that there is a division between these two worlds, and sometimes people, can't even make the connection between them?
Well, I think what comes to mind when you ask that question is we did with the initiative a march where we walked through Sweden and asked the people we met, what kind of country would you like to live in? How would you like Sweden to be? And if we asked people, would you like to talk about politics? People would shut the door in our face. But if we talked about, okay, what kind of society would you like to live in? Everybody had an opinion. And I think that is quite telling of what politics has become. I think politics has become something that is happening in a parliament, a debate that no one has the interest to listen to. You just state your standpoint, and you don't really listen to the other party. And I think that is why politics has gotten a bad reputation as well. So I can certainly see that, and I think when I heard the question the first time, I was like, politics is boring in a way, even though I'm very passionate about it. But if with that, I think my first association is that politics is broken. Politics is not really working. Yeah.
So if you imagine the young people of today, do you feel that there's, and this is my question, what is a political education for them? How would they reclaim that territory that you're describing? Have you've done a lot of work with young people. How do you introduce them to politics?
And I guess the political parties, I think fewer and fewer are engaged with them, but I think the people who are engaged, they get a very good training in a way, but I also notice with my friends who are in the political parties, they get a bit indoctrinated about the current system, and you don't really see what's possible outside of that. So I think an equally good training would be to be engaged in civil society or in movements. I mean, there's the old civil society maybe where you go to meetings and you do demonstrations, but now so much is happening online also with Avas or 350.org or Extinction Rebellion and all these new NGOs. So I think that is a great political training. And Fridays for the Future or Extinction Rebellion, I think maybe being the two examples that is really engaging people in a new way and people that were maybe not engaged before, at least in Sweden.
But in my experience with Extinction Rebellion and other similar movements, what I see is, you know, a growing idea of the change they wish to see. But when it comes to the power that they have to make that change possible, they suddenly feel obliged to hand it over to a political party. You know, it's as if there is no other real form or structure for their own vision to be held. So it's like they create a set of demands, for example, as with Extinction Rebellion, the 3 demands, and then they make a demand on government to fulfill it.
Yeah.
You know, have you had any experience of, or, you know, with working with the initiative, or could you describe a different kind of politics that might make it possible for people's movements to be expressed as a politics, or, you know, in other words, where does their power really lie is my question.
Yeah. I heard someone said, it started another political party, that politics is about, or party politics is about 3 things. One thing is it's about forming an opinion, talking about and seeing, okay, what do we want to do? The second thing is to move public opinion in that direction, to do campaigning around that issue. And the third thing is maybe to get it through. And I think that the first 2 things is very easy to do in a movement like Extinction Rebellion. But what I see now also is that people are experimenting with all different kinds of new things, like new kinds of countries. I have a friend who is involved in starting a new country in former Yugoslavia. They have 7 square kilometers, and they're experimenting with what can a country be, what is a citizenship. And I see it really as this transformation that, and I think the best analogy of where I see we're moving as society is this metaphor of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And first, the caterpillar, what it does, it eats its surroundings, it eats its egg, it eats its leaves, it eats its surrounding leaves, and then when it's eaten enough, it becomes this cocoon, and then after a while, it comes out as a butterfly, which cross-pollinates its surroundings and helps the surroundings. But I think what's important in that metaphor is that time in the cocoon takes time. And it's not easy. And I think we are in that, we're maybe moving into that cocoon now. And I can say for myself, I maybe been in that cocoon for the last, or since I left my political party, trying to figure out, okay, you know, if the party is not working, what is, and which has been this very frustrating time, very growing and educational time for sure, and quite painful. But I noticed when I came into Corona, I was quite prepared for it because I thought about this so much. But I think it will take time. And to come back to your question, I think Extinction Rebellion, they are posing their questions to the old system then, because the new system hasn't really formed. We are still in the cocoon. We are experimenting with new ways of getting things through. I think this experimenting with what is a country is super interesting. And then we have obviously like the transition movement, who's taking things into their own hands and more creating local currencies and like resilient ecosystems that can sustain regardless of what happens in society. And I think we probably need both, and I think we're going to see many more ways to go forward. And I think the innovation is going to come from the peripheries, but I think also that the current power centers, if they're interested in staying power, have to adopt also some of these innovations. And we see that obviously with more citizen budgets, citizen assemblies, dialogues with citizens before taking initiatives. So I think that is it's both happening, both on the peripheries and in center.
Just staying with the metaphor of the caterpillar and the pupa for a minute, one of the things that I understand to be core to the butterfly emerging as a butterfly is the presence of what they call imaginal cells. Do you know this term? So you know, a caterpillar always carries at all times the imaginal cell. So it always has a picture of itself, what it could become. Somewhere in it's part of the caterpillar, and then as you know, and it drives in a way this process of it going from caterpillar to pupa to butterfly. So there's always some sense of what it could become, buried deep in the heart of the animal, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you were talking about this being a stage, you know, where we're in pupa and it takes time, and it's, you know, even the look of a pupa, you know, is kind of unattractive, right? And it looks sort of dead, right? It looks a little bit like we're afraid our planet might be. But I wonder if you ever accessed your own imaginal cells, you know, meaning, you know, did you ever dream of another way of being political? You know, is this part of, you know, I often think about this when I'm talking to young people, you know, is it part of what drives people? They have this sense of what it could be.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, and I think what I'm coming out of these 1.5 years now is a new idea to drive politics and to change the system. And I think first I had to really come down to what is the core, what do we need to change? And I think my vision for the future is a world where humanity thrives in harmony with the thriving Earth. So obviously we have to thrive amongst each other and live in harmony amongst each other, and then in harmony with the planet. And I think what we need to do that is to value all living beings equally. And now we value both humans differently, and obviously humans and planet very differently, and we extract both humans and planet. And this can be changed on many. I mean, to do this, we have to change a lot of stuff. We have to change the political system. It's very short-sighted now. It has to be more long-sighted. The economic system, obviously, where now we reward bad stuff instead of good stuff, to put it simple. The culture, which is very individualistic, and I think we have to be more responsible for others. And I think also the educational system, and maybe where we train everybody to become a change maker and take care of the world and contribute to the world. Whereas now it's more a training to fitting in the current system. And obviously all these are quite hard to change, but I think the easiest one is maybe the educational system, where I have done work before. So what we're working on now is to launch a campaign and build the ecosystem or a movement really to change the educational system to enable and empower change makers. And I think that is definitely a way to be political in a new way, because I mean the educational system is to a large extent decided by politics. But if we have a movement large enough of parents, of school teachers, of stakeholders around the educational system, we can change it, of course.
So it seems to me that what you're describing is that education itself needs to be about changing or developing a capacity for making change happen, as on principle.
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I remember that Uffe Elbæk, who was the leader of the Alternative in Denmark, which I think inspired us both, used to run an academy called the Chaos Pilots, and so and that was really about training young people to have the capacity, to live in this ever-changing world, and to be able to literally, pilot the chaos. And that seems quite prescient to me. Really right now, what else do we need? So as the kids are in lockdown, we're all in lockdown, and they're being sent all these, tasks and, essays to write, and, just still belonging to the old system. It seems already to them to be so irrelevant to what's really going on right now.
Yeah. I mean, why is school not about real things? Yeah. You could also do education. Okay, how do we solve the environmental problems in our neighborhood, and incorporate social science and math and English and whatnot into that problem solving.
Yeah. And can you suggest to me or just describe what is the basis of the training that you've been offering the young people? Is that still your main work now?
No, I am certainly involved in it. I wouldn't say it's my main work. So what we do is to help youth first find their inner compass. What is my values? What is my passion? What is my strength? What issues do I feel passionate about in society? And then how can I take them on? How can I do something within my sphere of influence? So that's really the core of the training. And we started with training high school students directly, and then we moved on to give teachers these tools. And what we see also for building the change-making capacity, this organization Ashoka, you may know, has said a few skills are vital: empathy, teamwork, creativity. Oh, I lose them now. But to build these capacities.
And when you ask questions like, what are the values? Do you find that that you come to sets of common values, or that the young people easily identify what these values are? How do you arrive at values, and do you think they're universal in a sense, or do you feel that you find people have very different values?
So we talk about two kinds of values. One is the normative values, the values we agree upon as society. And the other is, we call it descriptive values. That is my own personal values, which gives me energy and passion. And say openness can be a value that we agree upon, and we have a common definition of as well. But I can also have openness as my value and have a certain different meaning for me as a person. So I think what we're striving for is not so much to arrive at a common set of values, but just what we find is that when people are in line with their values and act out of their values, they tend to be more moral, regardless, or act more ethically, regardless of what their values are. What we can say is common is underpinning these values are basic needs. In the self-determination theory, talk about 3 needs, and under that, or if you define that, or spread this out, there's actually 6 needs. So it's the need for contributing, for belonging, for developing, to feel safe, belonging, utveckling, to be significant, to be good at something, and the last one is always one you forget.
Yes, true.
Anyway, so that is common though. That is scientifically proven as well, that those are common. Everybody has these needs. And then some people have some needs more than other. It was interesting. I'm on the board of an organization called End Ecocide Sweden. And we did a training mapping out our needs, and then all of us had the same combination of the top needs. It was to contribute and to develop, which means that the group is quite fragile, because we lose a lot of perspectives, obviously. But I was very interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, what you've described, I think, also implies integrity. You know, that if you're aware of your values and you're living your values, you can show up as something. You know, and that showing upness it seems to be the heart for me of democracy. You know, so and you know, so and this is one of the really huge shifts that you're pointing at, that you know, could even on by itself change everything. You know, so I think that the conception of the human being, you know, in politics up till now, a lot of it, you know, politics is very informed by this idea that human beings are material and physical, and they need a roof over their head and they need money in their pocket so they can buy stuff. You know, and that's really how politics is driven. You know, but if you start to talk about these needs, and then they ask, why are people absent, you know, from politics, or why do we not succeed in our sustainable development goals? People are not on the ground. People are not able to do what we wish they could do. You know, but it could be just at, you know, in this very point that you're pointing at, you know, that if they don't even see themselves there and they can't engage because they're not showing up as a full human being, they're only being seen as a material entity, object of some other, you know, of an economy that sees them as this object, you know, then how are they going to become the owners of this change that needs to happen?
Yeah.
So even that small shift, you know, that could happen in education, where people start to own themselves, they begin to have agency, and then they can begin to remake the world. But until they do, they won't do that, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I find that very, very important. So, you know, so you and I can have this conversation. We're obviously in the same domain, right? But what do you think? What did you think right now? So imagine, okay, so we're in this coronavirus moment, and people are dreaming, you know, of something could change at this time. And in the UK, I don't know how it is with you. There was a statistic that says only 9% of people want to go back to the life they had before.
Really? Wow!
Isn't that shocking? I mean,
Tell
it's
me
shocking.
more about that.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'll share the article with you. But it was done by, it was not done by some small polling firm. It was done by Sky, and it was Sky News poll, and it's been shared by the RSA and also lots of major cultural institutions. Yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any political party pick that up yet.
No.
But it's something that we should know for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because what can we do in this moment? What do you think is possible? What's going to, you know, we can dream of realizing this, but what are our obstacles, do you feel? Directly, what are we now facing in trying to make this shift?
Well, I think, and there are a few things in this moment, and there are a few quotes. Winston Churchill said that it was something like, only in a crisis you can do the change necessary, or so don't waste a good crisis. And Milton Friedman had it also even more poignant, where he said that it's only a crisis that gives the opportunity to do big changes. So our main task is to keep ideas lying around for them to be possible to pick up in a crisis. And I think in this crisis, and that's why I said initially that I feel it slipping through our fingers a bit, is that I think the ideas are lying around. We talked about universal basic income. We talked about the Green New Deal. I mean, there's a lot of ideas for transition. I think we haven't organized around them enough. And I think that is the missing piece, that we are at this moment trying to figure out how do we organize. And we have organized in silos and in organizations, but we need to organize on a much bigger scale. I see that happening now. I think this new expression that has popped up in my horizon more and more the last couple of months is this notion of weaving. How do we weave together different organizations, different networks, different ecosystems, so we can do something together? And I think also in system change, you also talk about, how can I do as much indirect work as possible, supporting others, supporting an ecosystem, agree on the vision. I don't see that we are agreeing on the vision, and to your point as well of this imaginary cells. I don't see we are there yet, that we have a vision of this is where we want to go. And I think in all this, and that's why I said I think we're losing this moment, these enormous relief packages, and it's trillions of euros that's pumped up, and that we have to repay over the coming decades, which makes it very hard to do big reforms in the coming decades. Those are set very much on how do we go back to where we were before. How do we keep companies alive so that they survive the crisis? So I think, I mean, the short answer is organizing, which we have to do quickly.
Well, I mean, for sure, it's not going to come from the political parties, because they have too many obligations, and they have to stay on target with their own world. So the opposition has to be in opposition. And the government has to lead. It's a very and they have to maintain the economy somewhere. It's a trap for them. But the vast majority of us in society are surely free to do what we want, right? This is in a way it's a capturing of the imagination, isn't it? And another thing that I experience and have been experiencing for this past year is that when I think something isn't there, like you've just said now, it's not there yet, we haven't done it enough. It's to maybe, it's to stay open maybe and wonder whether that's really the truth. So the other day, almost by chance, we've been working at the community level on the principle of that if people are going to start to feel their own agency, they need to do it. They need to be able to feel it where they live, in relationship with the people around them. Otherwise, it's so vast, they can't see their impact anywhere. So it's just this idea that communities are important, and that you can develop people's capacities in there. But as long as they're linked to the global. Or they're thinking globally, then it's not small, it's just a container for this thinking, if you like. But I was thinking about how you were describing Extinction Rebellion, we had Occupy before. These are all built on a different idea of democracy, and how democracy arises and how you behave in trying to get decisions made, These are all new patterns of a possible new politics. And then I ran almost by accident into a movement in India called neighborocracy. And there we've written about it on our Daily Alternative. I can send it to you. Where they've been doing it for 25 years, and they've got 400,000 neighborhood parliaments. And they describe, how they happen, and what are the values underpinning them? And it's almost like listening to us, any of us talking. There's a sense for me that that what we've been trying to do, other people have been trying to do all over the world, and it's really how we find each other and recognize what we're doing as being in common and moving into relationship with each other, that we suddenly feel quite different about what's possible. So there's a sort of sense of I call it a fractal change. So it's the pattern of change that you're beginning to see as effective is probably being seen as effective in all different parts of the world, at a similar time, and could be shared and joined up and so on.
And I think I totally agree. Sorry to interrupt you. No, I totally agree with what you're saying, and I like the point that you point out that even if the politicians have obligations, we are free to do as we want. Although we might be affected by the circumstances of politics, and I think one thing that is key, because we always talk about sharing best practices and finding and I think and there's an abundance of information out there, the abundance of practices out there. So I think one challenge then is to still, okay, what is the relevant practice? And obviously it's very different with the cultural context. What can we copy from India that is really built on their traditions and culture, and what is applicable in Sweden or in the UK? I think one way to overcome that challenge is to see, okay, how have we solved problems? And then we can have a more open discussion to rather say, okay, we did this, look at us, we're really good. But if we're saying, okay, how can we solve these problems? So I think it creates an openness to have to really share information. Also in this context, I think one experience from the initiative, which I think was a really good learning, was that I think I came into it quite naively, thinking that our collective knowledge will just, transform, we will just manifest in this common wisdom that is coherent and clear. And that did not really happen. And I think what they did in the alternative, which we probably should have done, was actually the party leadership did an inspiration paper and said, okay, this is where we see we're going. And then based on those, they could go outside of those frames or inside of those frames, but they had something to build on. Which made it much easier for everyone to come and co-create and say, okay, so this is an idea. And they really also, with those ideas, portrayed a different system. So they spurred the imagination. So I think there is also a role for leadership. And I think that's maybe where it's hard for Extinction Rebellion and Occupy, because they talked very much about, okay, we have to start from scratch. We can't have any leaders, especially for Occupy, I think. Which made it very hard for them. So I think there is certainly a place for someone to paint that vision. And if you see big movements like Gandhi or in India or civil rights movements with Martin Luther King, I mean, they didn't have a formal position, neither of them, but they were very good at just painting the picture and getting people on board. And I think that is I wouldn't say an underestimated component, but maybe in this narrative or community that I think we both are in, where we idealize the idea of co-creating and participatory democracy. I think it's easy to forget that is actually an important aspect that at least I underestimated the importance of.
So the importance of the attraction of it, is that what you mean? And the importance of there already being a theory. Is that what you're describing? So not to start with.
No, I'm talking about this. It's more maybe leadership and the leadership of vision.
Mm. And do you feel that exists in a person, or do you feel it exists in a theory, like, for example, a theory of change?
I hope that we can do it in a theory. I think it's more commonly done in a person embodying that theory. That might be a cultural code. But I think certainly we want to move away from the story of the lone hero that is solving all the problems. I'm thinking there are some really good theory of changes, but I think the big changes that I can think of is usually embodied in a person, whether it's Gandhi or Mandela or Martin Luther King, or and I guess it's just because it becomes more concrete, maybe.
Yeah, or I wonder if it's also to do with the time that they were in. So it's almost like supreme confidence in one person's great confidence in everyone. Will attract people. So if I was in a crisis, I would go with the person who shows the most confidence. It's like, well, that person knows what they're doing. Especially if that includes having confidence in me. I'm thinking right now about this moment we're in, and there's been quite a lot of articles in more than one kind of newspaper about the female leaders during the coronavirus. I don't know if you've seen any of these articles.
And I've seen female leaders. I haven't seen the articles.
Yeah, there've been a number of them, and so identifying people like Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, or in fact Angela Merkel, Taiwan, Finland, Kenya, I think. There's like a number that have been identified as being effective at a time like this, and I wonder if you would agree. Do you recognize that, or do you think that that's irrelevant and circumstantial? It's random in some way.
I don't think it's random. I can certainly recognize it. I haven't thought about it. When you mentioned female leaders that has emerged in this time, I also thought of Naomi Klein, which I've seen all over the place in this time, and it's really very vocal. And it's obviously not directly party political. I think maybe because it's a health crisis, we like the idea of the mother taking care of us in a way.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah,
I don't know. I wonder because I believe very much in masculine and feminine energy, and I think both men and women can have masculine and feminine energy. I think we need more feminine energy in the world. I believe probably some of these female leaders has quite a bit of masculine energy. I would say like Angela Merkel, it doesn't come across as a very feminine leadership. So I'm wondering if just the fact that she's a woman makes a difference. But I think maybe it does. Maybe it does.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But also coming back to what we said earlier about sort of the lone hero or the person, I think also in as you said, the time we were in, and I think the more complex a world, the more complex the world becomes, the harder it is obviously for one person to assume leadership. So it's probably not possible anymore for one person to be the sole leader. I'm thinking a very concrete example. I had a friend who worked at McKinsey 12 years ago and had an alumni meeting, and then a partner told him, said, when you were at McKinsey, a partner here could overview 70% of all the work we did, all the projects, and now a partner can overview about 5%. And I think, you know, that's one company, but that's probably true for a prime minister or a leader of a movement or a leader of anything.
But what does that imply? That for example, to go back to Jacinda Ardern, one of the things that was recognized about her exemplary leadership was that she knows how to stand aside. All right, so she can easily give the spotlight to the scientist and say, "Now, everybody, listen to this to the scientist, because he's the guy who knows how to, you know what is the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. So let's listen to what he says and, you know, go with that." You know, which is very different from the way that we tend to do it in the UK. You know, where we even send political advisors into the scientists' private spaces to try to shape the science, you know, to try to frame it in ways that we find it would be politically acceptable. And then we, you know, the ministers will try to convey the science to the people, not very successfully, and sometimes contradict the scientists. You know, so the way that Donald Trump, for example, decides which scientists are today's acceptable science, you know, but there isn't a clear ability to stand aside and let somebody else take the leadership role for that moment. And that's just a different kind of leadership, isn't it? So,
yeah, for sure.
You know, you can be a leader from the front, or a leader from the side, or they say a leader from behind. You know, different kinds of leadership, but there she is. She is the prime minister of her country. But she's demonstrating leadership of a new kind. You know, so yes, you know, so I think it seems to me that leadership is just as important as it ever was, but it may be more fluid.
Yeah,
as a concept, you know.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that is the one example, because that is the case in Sweden. I mean, Sweden has maybe a very special system, but where the civil servants has a very high authority, and the minister can actually they can appoint the leadership of the agencies, but they cannot interfere in the work of the agencies. So the agency is very high agency and or independence. And in Sweden we have a state epidemiologist that every day gives a press conference. And our prime minister, we see him every second week, or he gives a press conference. But it's the state epidemiologist that everybody listens to, and that sets the policy for the country, and that's coordinating with the other agencies. And that's in Sweden we have a male prime minister. So I mean, I think it's the system in Sweden, certainly, but it's also him stepping aside very much for the scientists to lead.
So you know, it sounds very distinct, you know, that you could say we're moving into an age, and we need to move into an age with more feminine qualities, which men and women bring. So what would you yourself describe as those qualities that you see are going to help bring in the future that you're thinking about?
Empathy, certainly. Perspective taking, seeing other perspectives, and in that being also more flexible. Don't assume that I am right and I have all the knowledge, but listening and learning from others, and co-creating, teamwork. and care for the group. Maybe that goes in hand with empathy, but this compassion and responsibility for the larger. It's the first ones that comes to mind.
Right. And it sounds to me as if you feel that
sorry, and in that also a lack of maybe some male qualities or masculine qualities, which I think is very much about standing out, going full on with my idea, need to stand in the spotlight, taking credit.
Sorry, you're saying that that balances that we need both.
No,
of those
I think we need the absence of those,
or less of those things.
Yeah.
I was going to say. So what are the masculine qualities that you would recognize as needing to be maintained?
Good. Yeah, I think also and maybe now that's exemplified by the women you mentioned, but I think a male leadership where it's very good is somewhere where you can lean on that person a bit, that you can feel safe and to feel, okay, I will hold you. I think that is certainly a quality that we need and that I would like to see. And in that being trustworthy and honorable.
Yeah, that's like I've thought about that. I mean, I'm feeling about it differently hearing you speak about it that way, and I think that's something that's undervalued for sure in the discussion about what needs to change. Is what needs to be maintained. So that's great. So if I was just to invite you now to tell me some sort of a story that about a future that you're looking forward to, what can you even it could be personal or it could be social, but how can you grasp a little bit of the future that you're looking forward to, that you would be looking forward to?
Well, what I'm really excited about, and that I mentioned as well, is this change of the school system, where youth come into the school system and are helped to identify what they're passionate about, what they care about, and then are encouraged to take action on that, help find solutions, help create a better society. I think the ripple-on effect for that kind of society, where youth are trained to that and the whole ecosystem around them actually want them to co-lead that change, rather than say, okay, you are the future, you will have to learn now and then you will take over in 10 years. That will be quite amazing, because I think that will shift the mindset for the whole society. So that I am hugely looking forward to, and I see it happening in pockets. In Sweden, obviously, we're very proud of Greta, who's really emerging as a leader that people are listening to, and at the age of 16. And if we can have more of those, I think that would be quite an amazing future. And I think the beauty of youth is that they are not so indoctrinated by the current system. They think more openly. We talked about the feminine qualities of maybe seeing more openly. So I think they can come with very innovative and new approaches.
Yeah, it's quite, actually, when you think about it that way, then it's suddenly it's like watching lots of flowers suddenly blooming. Sorry, that's a bad metaphor because it's associated with China, but it's like things suddenly coming to life. And I wonder how our economy and can bend towards that, to really allow that creativity to thrive.
Yeah. And that's the question in this moment. I mean, I saw this little tweet where it said, it's funny that our economy is crashing because people are just buying what they need. And because I think the system we have is really built on our consuming so much and are contributing to that system, which encourages us to consume. Whereas that maybe doesn't meet our psychological needs. So it is really a different kind of economy, which probably going to be smaller in GDP terms than it is today. And how that is, I mean, the only way I can see it, but my imagination might be limiting, is that it's more decentralized, that we have closer communities that support each other and are more resilient. And that is happening, I think, especially in the rural areas, at least in Sweden. How it's going to play out in the cities, I don't know. And now we see a majority of people living in the cities. But I'm sure it will happen in the cities as well. In one way or form. The hard thing in the cities is, of course, to produce food. You need space for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of innovation around that, isn't there?
Oh, for sure, vertical farming and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced. I think the soil is so important, but we'll see.
Yeah. Good. Maybe one of your young people will come up with a solution to that.
For sure.
Anyway, that's great. Thanks very much, Michael. So anything else that you feel that we haven't really touched on that you still want to express here that is
No, I think it was quite fruitful conversation. Quite happy. Yeah.
Good, great. All right. Well, I'll finish the conversation and let's hope for your butterfly to take flight soon.
Lovely.